Well, good afternoon, guys. It is June 19th today, and I'm in the southern end of Bryce Canyon National Park on the Rig Spring Trail. I'm at about 8,000 feet in elevation currently, but I'm well below the rim, which is interesting because in the northern, most heavily used part of Bryce Canyon, the rim is at 8,000 feet, so it's quite a lot higher, and when I get to the top, you'll see a lot more alpine vegetation, but right now I'm in a very mid-elevation forest. I just want to talk about some of the plants we can find here and a bit of the ecology and geology of the place, so let's just get started and see what we find today. As I said, the dominant tree species you find here is Pinus ponderosa, also known as the Ponderosa Pine. That shouldn't be very surprising, but we see a lot of great specimens here. They have long needles, they grow quite tall, and they prefer drier areas that are still wet enough to support forests all throughout the Intermountain West. Well, oddly, not really in the Wasatch Mountains. They're quite rare if found there at all, and most of them have been planted, so we don't really grow very naturally, it seems. Why that is kind of a mystery, but here they're clearly very abundant and form an important part of the forest here. The other most common tree species you see around here is Douglas fir, which you can see a specimen of right there. It's a Pseudotsuga menziesii. That might actually be a different species now that I look closer at it, but you can see some cones, we'll know for sure. Okay, I think I'm seeing a few Douglas fir cones on the ground. Let me look at the needles though, that's how you really need to be sure. Oh, this is a white fir actually, my bad. I made a great video on how to tell apart white fir, or it could be an alpine fir too, but tell apart true firs from the Douglas fir. It involves looking at the base of the needle because there's a little crook in the base of the needle when you look at Douglas firs, but you don't see it on the true firs, which are members of the genus Abies. Again, it looks like it's Abies concolor to me. Going quite a lot higher than you find it in the Wasatch, which makes sense because this area is a bit warmer than northern Utah. Okay, this is a Douglas fir right there. See, they're very hard to tell apart. Their needles sort of grow more around the branches, which is typical of the genus, and also if you look up close to them, I have to walk through these shrubs to do that. I'll find some Douglas fir later. You'd notice that there's a little bit of a crook at the base of the needle that's very diagnostic of the species. There's also a lot of important ground shrubs here. This is Greenleaf Manzanita, also known as Arctostaphylos patula. The dominant ground shrub in this place, it seems. They don't get very tall, but they are quite fire resistant. They can grow back easily after fire, which this area definitely gets quite a lot of. I mean, we'll definitely pass through some burn areas on the way up. It is, if you couldn't tell, a evergreen, so it doesn't shed its leaves, and they're quite thick and leathery, which, I mean, it'd be quite a waste to make thick, leathery leaves every year when you can just keep them for a few years as you grow. And I just found some berries. There they are. Those are Arctostaphylos berries. Remember the family Ericaceae, which is a family of blueberries and cranberries, and a few other things like that, though I don't think these ones are edible. I heard they might be a little bit toxic, but don't quote me on that. Yeah, these are the plants that dominate communities, but hopefully I can talk about some more wildflowers as I go up. Now, if you are wondering how Bryce Canyon formed, the story begins about 50 million years ago during the Eocene epoch with the Clarion Formation. Utah was very flat during this time, and sediment eroded down into a vast lake and wetland complex that ran northeast to southwest through the state. Lots of mud and calcareous deposits were laid down over millions of years, creating different types of rock as the lake shrank and grew over and over again. Oxidation of lake sediments resulted in lots of hematite, which is basically just a fancy name for common red rust, and gave the sediments their pinker color. These sediments eventually lithified into primarily limestone, but also mudstones and siltstones with less calcareous material. This took place around 60 to 40 million years ago, at the same time that the Eocene Green River Formation was being deposited to the northeast. This formation is more composed of beds of mudstone, siltstone, coal, and shales, some of which are full of crude oil. Later deposits of the Clarion had less oxidation, resulting in the white member. Not coincidentally, there was less plant and animal life in this stage, and there are less fossils to be found in this upper member. Eventually, Utah dried out, and then around 10 to 20 million years ago, uplift throughout the state raised these plateaus that run through Utah's heart, and very quickly they started eroding. This formation is quite weak and crumbly to begin with, but the calcium carbonate of limestone in particular is quite water-soluble and is further dissolved by the carbonic acid naturally found in rainwater from the dissolution of carbon dioxide. Differences in rates of erosion as well as frost wedging has led to the spectacular hoodoos and sweeping exposures of pink rock we see today. Some other common shrubs you can see around here. This is, I think it's Rosa nutkana, if I had to guess. It has some characteristics that look like Rosa woodsii, but the flowers seem bigger. I mean, look at this. It's probably shriveled up. That's part of why it looks smaller, but the little rose hip looks a bit smaller than it should be for nutkana. But the flowers are also being borne singly for the most part, it seems. So I think it's Rosa nutkana rather than Rosa woodsii. You can find both around here just like you can in the Wasatch. We also got a lot of Antelope Bitterbrush. It's an important shrub species. If I haven't mentioned it already, I'll do it again now. It's a member of the family Menziesii. See, I think it's just past bloom. It's starting to fruit now. So we can't see its flowers at this elevation, but we might at higher elevations. It's got, just like Artemisia tridentata, which is not very closely related, it has 3-toothed leaves, hence tridentata. But again, this is a Purshia species. There's a few others that are very quintessential of the American West, though this one, you don't see it just growing in the forest like you do in the Wasatch. I think it has to be drier for that to happen, because this is definitely a drier site than the Wasatch is. The snow melts sooner. It might get more summer rain, but yeah, and you see just how sprawling and spread out these shrubs are, and how long their branches are. They tend to grow a lot denser, but perhaps taller in the deserts, interestingly. That over there, I believe, is an Amelanchier or utahensis, which I'm sure I can get a better view of in a second. Actually, no, I take that one back. Actually, I think that's what it is. It might be a snowberry, though. I just can't really see. I'm gonna go with the Amelanchier, but we can definitely find one as I get further down. But now, one other shrub I can talk about. Sorry for shaking you guys so much. This is Juniperus communis. Very common juniper species the whole world over, at least the northern hemisphere, I should say, in temperate areas. But you can also find it growing in like high altitude parts of Africa, for instance. This is what it looks like here. Not so much like a juniper, but actually, this is actually the biggest Juniperus communis specimen I've ever seen in my life. It's almost like a large shrub or small tree even. Look at this big field of roses we got. Well, relatively speaking, it's kind of big. Some of these might be woodsii actually, because I've seen some of the hips growing in clusters. Some other cool things here. This, I think this is what I just identified recently. This, I'm pretty sure, is Lithospermum multiflorum. So it's a species of Stoneseed, one that grows around here. I don't think it's the ruderale, which you find in the Wasatch Front area and other areas pretty commonly. This one said multiflorum. It's got yellow flowers and it kind of grows taller like this. There's another species that grows lower to the ground. They're also called puccoons. I think that's cooler than Stoneseed. Interestingly, there's a lot of rushes growing all over here, Juncus species, so this must be seasonally wet at least. I think it definitely is, considering we got some Frasera here as well. This is Frasera speciosa. Not all Fraseras like wetter habitats, but this one does. Now, Fraseras are cool. I mean, just are sometimes called monument plants. I should say this species in particular is called the monument plant because, I don't know why, I guess because it grows tall like a monument, but the reason it's growing so tall is because it's blooming. For the most part, they just grow as a sort of cluster of leaves on the ground, sort of like that, except, well, bigger, but a bigger cluster of leaves. But right now it's putting all its energy that it's stored up over several, I don't know how many years it did, into growing up tall and building a stalk, because they only flower once before they die off. That's what's called being monocarpic. Hope I'm making enough sense. Some old cow poop. Nothing's more exciting than that. Oh, here we go. Here's a younger Frasera speciosa. Sometimes, this one's probably pretty young because they can get larger clusters of leaves than this when they're not yet ready to bloom. It's my foot for comparison. But yeah, I think it's very cool because there are other species of Frasera in Utah that I don't think are monocarpic, like Frasera albomarginata. That one's a desert species. And here's the Amelanchier or utahensis I was talking about. Definitely not a snowberry, which there is quite a lot of them growing around here, but this is a cool one. Now, it doesn't just grow in Utah, it grows all over the Intermountain West in drier sites as compared to Amelanchier alnifolius, which grows in riparian areas, like all over the whole North American continent. It's called Saskatoon, which or Saskatoon Serviceberry, though we've been just called Saskatoon. But I guess maybe there being a city in Canada called Saskatoon named after the plant may have confused some people. So, yeah, you know, whatever. So nice today. Now here we are at the top of the rim. It's only 8,300 feet, but as we head back up to the top, it'll be about 9,000 feet at the rim. I might actually stop the video here and start a new one. If that does happen, I guess you'll know when I finally upload them. There's a couple other plants I want to talk about here. Firstly, this is the Markagunt, I think it's the Markagunt Penstemon, Penstemon leiophyllus. Now you're technically on the Ponderosa plateau, but they're sort of very close to each other. The Markagunt is where Cedar Breaks is, by the way. They both contain the Claron Formation that was uplifted several million years ago and started eroding to form the high plateaus of south central Utah. How pretty that plant is. So nice. It's very windy today. I should mention also, there's a wildfire not too far from here. I'm going to be fine, but it might interfere with where I was planning on camping tonight. Yeah, it's a little hard to see the smoke, but it's right between the trees there. It was crazy how much it was burning, but it's a little bit worrisome. But man, just look how tall some of these Ponderosa pines are. I feel so lucky to be here right now. So a lot of it's a straggleous looking thing growing all over the ground, but I don't actually know if that's what it is. It could be something different, and I'm not seeing any flowers, so it's a little tricky to ID them. But it's just crazy how many different astragalus there are in this part of Utah especially. So again, potentially stop the video now, so thanks for watching and see you next time, maybe.